Well, good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is where you are. If you're on auto steer, you can even take a look every once in a while at what we're going to look at here on this Cursebuster. This is a 20-foot version of our latest model of the Cursebuster. Been a lot of changes over the past 10, 12 years, and this one is the most current rendering, and so we're going to do a little guided tour. Get lots of texts and phone calls from people looking at Cursebusters these days, and so I thought it advisable to give you an overview of how it's adjusted and give you some idea of why it works and creates the kinds of results that we've been seeing. So we'll start with basically the soil engaging part. That's what's most important, and that's what really sets the machine apart from all the others in the marketplace. This is a tandem version. Most of this kind of technology is only consisting of a single rank, but in this case we run two ranks. And we do this because we need additional fracture forces to complement the performance of the Phillips rotary harrow, which is on the back of the machine. So essentially the front rank forms the hole and fractures the soil toward the center line of the machine. And it is suspended hydraulically underneath here, which we'll touch on how it's managed later. So each one of these is protected. Every 5-foot section of a module is protected from undulations and rocks and other things by hydraulic down pressure. The spring arm here actually is allowing the unit to have shock absorbing capacity moving horizontally, which, because the tine is pushing horizontally, creating lateral fracture forces, it's essential that you have some kind of forgiveness for the sudden impact. And so by putting the spring arm vertically this way, we're able to achieve that. The assembly in the rear actually times itself automatically, and it will use the same hole that's formed by the front rank, but this tine in the rear will push in the opposite direction out of the same hole. So what we wind up having here is essentially field-wide, machine-wide total fracture between each entry event. And so when root systems grow, water is occurring to being applied, needs to infiltrate and percolate, it diffuses through all these fracture forces throughout the entire field. Okay, now the other thing that's very unique about this new assembly is that it's service-free. There is no grease fittings. This uses a pair of tapered roller bearings, which are packed with number 1 grease when they're installed, and they sit inside attached to this hub, this 35-pound casting, and the bearings merely are supporting this spindle, which is located externally and fastened here into the assembly. So this is basically service-free. We've had our test machine out for 6 years, done about 6,000 acres, and no one has ever touched the bearing, made any kind of service, nothing. It's all just basically check it over, make sure it's all tight, go to work. The adjustment for this assembly is accomplished here, and normally new set of tines like these would only be set at 0 to 1 degree of offset. It has 3 settings, 0, 1, 2, and 3 degrees. And so it's as simple as pulling a pin, moving the arm, and reinstalling the pins. This is, of course, a steady rest for transport. If we move toward the rear, we want to observe when this machine is in the field and working that all of the frames are parallel. This is very important to the machine. It's all designed so that every horizontal surface on the machine is in the same plane, all the way back to this portion back here. And that's also that these rotary harrow frames are going to run parallel with the soil surface and present the same depth of penetration in the front and the rear of the rotary harrows. These things, of course, are just they're just allowed to rock. The harrow assemblies rotate freely. There's no power or anything added to them. They are adjustable here. As you see, there are a series of holes. This is a 25-degree angular offset, 30, 35, and 40 degrees, which is the most aggressive. The extra set of holes is for someone who doesn't use hydraulics, and they just want to pin the swing arm into its location, so you have an opportunity to put a pin on both sides. But this unit, like most of our units, is equipped with a hydraulic cylinder, In the center, that hydraulic cylinder controls 2 units by being linked together. These are adjustable with a T-bolt located here. And so this frame as well as that and the main frame are all parallel. The harrow can be not only reversed hydraulically so that it throws soil in opposite directions, so that in any case, if you've got fertilizer, lime material, seed, and you want to try to make sure it always is moving in the same direction, maybe heavy corn residue, and you don't want to put it together and pull it apart, you want this all to move together across the field, or maybe you're on sloping ground and you'd like to see soil move back up the slope. You can start at the bottom and move this machine up the hill and always throw soil off the harrows up grade. So it's reversible, rotatable, and if you pull these 2 U-bolts, one on either hinge, and you can swing this entire unit around this center pivot bolt, and instead of being in what we call right now the passive position, where the tines are actually sloping back, giving you that sort of that kitchen broom effect where you're pulling soil, instead when you reverse this, you have a drafting effect, more like the shop broom pushing against soil. So the harrow is very flexible. You can do a lot of different things with it. A lot of people are discovering that it doesn't really move seed, and a number of people now are doing things where they're planting the field first in germinating weed populations, then running the rotary harrow and the Cursebuster as if the seed wasn't even out there. It doesn't move the seed, and miraculously, it brings wonderful, abundant capillary water up to where the seed has been placed so that you get very uniform germination. And it's because the capillary water produces equal seed hydration throughout the field. All right, so from there, let's move around to the front of the machine and we'll look at some of the sophistication in the hydraulic controls of the rollers and the wings. Okay, now we've been talking about a lot of different things that can be controlled on this, and among those is the wing itself. In different soil situations, you need to transfer weight from the center section of the frame out to the wing tip in order to maintain penetration equally uniform across the entire machine. And that's exactly what this circuit does here. This is adjustable so that you're transferring weight. Normally this will run on most machines in that 500 to 600 pounds of pressure on this wing fold cylinder here, which will then control the amount of pressure that's on the wing tip. These 2 gauges here are attached to the front roller circuit and the rear roller circuit, and you can change those independently. And from time to time, depending on soil conditions, you need to do that. Most of the time, they will both run the same pressure, and historically, our frame weight supports around 1,000 to 1,100, sometimes 1,200 psi on the gauge in order to hold the frame at the proper operating height. The main thing is to make sure that the frame height is maintained properly so that the rotary harrows in operation are trailing at about a 45-degree angle on the tensioning arm of the harrows. And that's really how you can check to make sure that your frame is level from front to rear and that the frame itself is operating at the proper height. With that, I think we've got pretty well most of it covered. We have an adjustment linkage here for fine-tuning the levelness of the frame. The clevis on the hitch, of course, is adjustable. It has different height adjustments down there for drawbar height, and then to fine-tune the machine level, then we just use this big turnbuckle here to adjust for final leveling of the frame. And with that, you've had the guided tour. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I've answered some questions. If I've raised some questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can visit on my website through contact page. You can dial me up at 260-706-3133 or send me a text or an email at jim@soilcursebuster.com. Look forward to talking to you some more.